You won't believe what happened to me the night my parents revealed the truth about how they divided their fortune. If you're watching this, make sure you hit subscribe because this story is not just about money. It's about betrayal, family, and a twist that even I couldn't have predicted. I grew up in what everyone on the outside thought was a picture-perfect family. My father was a self-made billionaire in real estate, my mother a woman who lived for charity galas and social appearances, and my older brother the golden child who could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, was the afterthought, the quiet one, the mistake they often reminded me I was. For years I told myself it didn't matter. I kept my head down, worked hard, and tried to carve out my own path in life. But deep down, I always wondered, would they ever truly see me as their child, or was I destined to live in the shadow of the son they worshipped? That question was answered one summer evening, when they gathered us both in the grand living room of the estate, the chandeliers blazing above us, glasses of champagne in their hands, and announced the distribution of their wealth. My brother sat confidently in the leather chair opposite them, his grin spreading as they handed him the deed to a $33 million property in Malibu. Not only that, but they transferred a sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills into his name, and to top it all off, tossed him the keys to a brand new Tesla Model X like it was pocket change. The room erupted in laughter and congratulations from the friends and lawyers who had gathered to witness this moment. I sat quietly, my palms pressed against my knees, waiting for my turn. My mother glanced at me, then at my father, a faint flicker of hesitation in her eyes before she cleared her throat and said, "And for you." The pause stretched so long that even my brother chuckled under his breath. But before she could continue, the door to the room opened, and a man I had never seen before walked in tall, calm, dressed in a charcoal suit. He carried a single white envelope. Without saying a word, he crossed the room, ignored my parents' protests, and placed the envelope in my hands. "This is for you," he said, his voice firm, almost reverent, before turning and walking out as quickly as he had entered. The room went silent. My brother smirked. My father looked furious. And I had no idea that inside that envelope was the key to everything they had tried to deny me my entire life. The envelope felt strangely heavy in my hands, as though it carried more than just paper. It carried weight, history, and answers. Everyone's eyes were on me, waiting, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disdain. My brother leaned back in his chair with that smug grin plastered on his face, swirling his champagne like a king watching a pauper beg for scraps. My father cleared his throat, clearly annoyed. "Don't bother with that nonsense," he said coldly. "It's probably a mistake. Security should never have let that man in here." But there was something in the way the stranger had looked at me, something purposeful, that made me ignore my father's words. My fingers trembled slightly as I slid the flap open and pulled out the contents. Inside was a single letter, handwritten in ink that had begun to fade at the edges, and behind it, a thin black keycard with a logo I didn't recognize. The letter began simply, "If you are reading this, then it means the time has come. What you thought you knew about your life, your family, and your worth is only the surface of the truth. Do not dismiss this. Everything depends on it." My heart pounded harder with each word, my breath shallow as I read on. The letter was from someone named Daniel Whitmore, a name I had never heard before. Yet as I read his words, it became clear that this man knew far too much about me, about my childhood, about the quiet neglect I had endured. He wrote about watching from a distance, about promises made to me long before I could even understand what they meant. He wrote of debts owed, not by me, but by my parents, and of a legacy I had inherited that they had tried desperately to bury. By the time I reached the end of the letter, my hands were shaking. The final line read, "That keycard unlocks the vault that holds what is rightfully yours. Go to the address on the back, and you will learn everything." I flipped the paper over, and sure enough, scrawled in neat block letters was an address downtown, one I recognized faintly as the location of a bank my father used for his most confidential dealings. My father lunged forward, trying to snatch the letter from me, but I pulled back. His face had twisted into something ugly, panic flickering beneath his fury. My brother laughed outright. "What is this? Some elaborate prank?" What vault? What legacy? Don't tell me you're actually buying into this fairy tale. My mother just sat frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her hand, eyes darting between me and the letter. She knew something. For the first time in my life, I had leverage. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten one, the invisible shadow to their shining star. I'm going, I said quietly, standing to my feet. My father's voice thundered through the room. You will do no such thing. But the words only confirmed what I had begun to suspect. This was real, and they were terrified. Without another glance back, I slipped the envelope into my pocket and walked out of that mansion. My brother's mocking laughter followed me out the door, but for once, it didn't sting. I knew, deep in my gut, that something bigger than all of them was waiting for me. That night, sleep was impossible. I turned the black keycard over in my hands 100 times, staring at the mysterious logo engraved into it. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of inheritance my parents had hidden? Or was it a cruel trick by someone who knew just how desperate I was to feel like I belonged? By morning, the decision was made. I took the first train into the city, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. When I arrived at the imposing gray stone building downtown, I hesitated at the foot of the steps. The place exuded power, secrecy, and history. The polished brass letters above the doors gleamed in the sunlight. Whitmore Trust and Security. The name from the letter. My pulse quickened. I stepped inside, greeted by marble floors and silent clerks who seemed to know exactly who I was the moment I entered. Without a word, one of them guided me through security and down into a subterranean vault. The deeper we went, the colder the air grew, the walls lined with steel and locked doors that whispered of fortunes and secrets hidden away. Finally, we stopped before a massive vault door. The clerk gestured to the keycard in my hand. "Insert it," he said. My throat tightened as I slid it into the slot. A series of mechanical clicks echoed in the chamber, followed by a heavy rumble. The vault slowly swung open. Inside was not stacks of gold, not piles of money, but boxes, files, and documents organized in meticulous order. At the center stood a pedestal, and on it, a single leather-bound ledger with my name embossed across the cover. I approached slowly, heart in my throat. I lifted the ledger and opened it. Inside were records, transactions, properties, trusts, all tied to my name. My parents' names appeared again and again, signatures scrawled next to transfers, each note more damning than the last. It was proof that a vast fortune had been siphoned from me, funneled into my brother's accounts, hidden beneath layers of shell companies and deceit. My head spun as the truth settled in. My parents hadn't just ignored me, they had deliberately robbed me of everything I was meant to inherit. Rage and heartbreak warred inside me. But then, at the very back of the ledger, tucked into a hidden sleeve, was another envelope. This one bore the wax seal of the Whitmore family crest. I tore it open, and inside was a single sheet of paper with a message that changed everything. "You are not alone. Come to the address below tonight, and all will be revealed." I remember staring at that envelope for what felt like hours, my hands trembling, the cheap fluorescent light of my tiny rented room flickering above me, casting shadows that made the moment feel even more surreal, almost cinematic, like I had stepped out of my own sad life and into a scene from a movie. My parents' voices still echoed in my head from that very afternoon, praising my brother for his business acumen, celebrating his supposed achievements with champagne. Their laughter bouncing off the marble walls of the mansion they had handed him on a silver platter, while I stood at the edge of the gathering, invisible, treated like I didn't exist, not a son, not even family, but just some nuisance that wouldn't go away. And now here I was, a stranger's envelope in my hand, a stranger whose face I could barely recall, only the piercing eyes and the calm voice saying, "This will change everything for you. Don't waste it." I slid my finger under the flap and ripped it open, half expecting a cruel joke, half hoping for a miracle, and when I saw what was inside, my chest tightened, my breath caught, and my knees almost buckled. It wasn't money, not at first glance, but documents, official, sealed, stamped, carrying weight. A legal deed, contracts, and beneath them, a cashier's check with numbers so large my brain refused to process them. $35 million. More than my brother had been gifted, more than I ever dreamed of, more than enough to erase years of pain, debt, and humiliation. But what shocked me even more was the letter clipped to it, handwritten in elegant cursive. This is rightfully yours. Your parents won't tell you, but the truth cannot stay buried forever. Meet me tomorrow at dawn, Pier 17. Come alone. My heart raced as questions erupted in my mind like fireworks. Who was this stranger? Why me? How did they know about the twisted dynamics in my family? And what truth were they talking about? The entire night I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, imagining scenarios. Was this some scam, some trap, or was it the hand of fate finally reaching down to lift me from the ashes? The clock ticked unbearably slow, every minute dragging as I sat staring at the envelope, rereading the letter 100 times, my emotions a storm of anger, hope, fear, and a strange sense of destiny. And through it all, a whisper inside me repeated, "Don't give up. Tomorrow, everything changes." As dawn broke, the city stirring to life, I walked toward the pier, my heart pounding louder than the sound of the waves, not knowing that what awaited me there would shatter my understanding of family, loyalty, betrayal, and, ultimately, the definition of wealth itself. The morning air at Pier 17 was heavy with mist, the kind that clung to your clothes and blurred the horizon so that the line between sea and sky seemed erased. Just like the blurred lines between my life of neglect and the possibility of something entirely different that was waiting for me in that envelope. My footsteps echoed on the wooden planks as seagulls circled overhead, their cries sharp and unsettling, as though they, too, were witnesses to the unraveling of something bigger than I could comprehend. I gripped the envelope tight inside my jacket pocket, the weight of it not just physical but emotional, a reminder that my entire existence had been split into before and after the moment I opened it. I searched the pier, scanning faces of fishermen, joggers, early morning wanderers, but then I saw him, a tall man, silver hair pulled back, wearing a dark overcoat despite the humid air, standing by the edge where the tide slapped against the supports. He turned when I approached, his eyes piercing, filled with recognition, though I had no memory of ever meeting him. "You came," he said simply, his voice deep, calm, carrying an authority that immediately made me stand straighter. I wanted to demand answers, to ask why he had inserted himself into my life, but my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. He gestured toward a bench, and we sat. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a worn leather folder, sliding it across to me. "Before you ask, know this, your parents lied to you. Lied about who you are, about what belongs to you, about why you've been treated as the unwanted one while your brother was showered with gifts and praise." My chest burned, part of me resisting, not wanting to believe, but another part desperate to know. "Look inside," he urged. And when I did, I felt the ground beneath me tilt. There were photographs. My mother, much younger, standing beside the very man now sitting across from me, holding a baby in her arms. There were legal documents, adoption papers never filed, financial records, letters hidden away. My entire life I had been told I was a burden, an accident, an unplanned child they begrudgingly tolerated, but the truth laid bare in those documents revealed something entirely different. I wasn't their biological son at all. The man across from me, this stranger, was my real father. My parents had taken me in under false pretenses, not out of kindness, but because of what he left behind for me: inheritance, trusts, assets, things they hid and diverted to my brother to ensure I remained in the shadows. My blood turned cold, anger surging through me like a tidal wave. I wanted to scream, to confront them immediately, but my father, my real father, placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "Patience," he said softly. "The time for truth is coming, but you must be smart." That envelope was only the beginning. What comes next will test you more than all the neglect you endured. His eyes softened, and in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt seen, truly seen, not as a servant, not as a failure, but as someone who mattered. The waves crashed louder, the gulls cried out, and the mist began to lift, revealing a horizon painted gold by the rising sun, as though the universe itself was telling me that a new chapter had begun, one that no mansion, Tesla, or millions gifted to my brother could ever overshadow. The drive back from Pier 17 felt like I was traveling not just through streets I had known my entire life, but through layers of lies that were peeling away with every mile. My real father's revelations echoed louder than the hum of the car engine, louder than the honks of impatient commuters. I kept glancing at the envelope on the seat beside me, the deed, the check, the documents that proved everything he had said. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles white, because my mind was a storm of emotions: fury at the betrayal, grief for the years stolen from me, disbelief that my life had been orchestrated by people who should have protected me, and yet, simmering beneath all that, an unfamiliar fire, the fire of power, of freedom, of knowing the truth. By the time I pulled up outside the mansion, the very one my brother now occupied like a prince in his castle, I no longer felt invisible. My chest rose with purpose. I walked through those iron gates as if they were mine, and deep down I knew they always had been. The staff eyed me curiously, some with pity, some with dismissal, as though I was the stray who didn't belong. But when I entered the grand hall and my parents turned from their laughter-filled breakfast with my brother, their smiles froze, their eyes narrowing at the sight of me holding the envelope. "What are you doing here?" My mother hissed, her voice sharp, but beneath it, I caught a tremor of fear. "You weren't invited," my father added coldly, but his hand shook slightly as he set his glass down. My brother leaned back in his chair, smug as always, ready to mock, ready to remind me I was nothing. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I dropped the envelope onto the table, the sound of it slapping against polished mahogany like thunder rolling through the room. The documents spilled out, and with them, their carefully built facade crumbled. My brother reached for the check, his eyes widening, but I slapped his hand away. "Not yours," I said, my voice low, steady, commanding in a way even I didn't recognize. My parents' faces drained of color as they scanned the papers, the truth written in black and white. Where did you get this?" my father stammered. I leaned forward, locking eyes with them, my voice cold and unyielding. "From the man you tried to erase. From the man who gave me life. My father. My real father." Silence swallowed the room, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock, each second hammering the weight of their guilt deeper into the air. My mother tried to speak, to spin another lie, but I raised my hand to stop her. "No more. You treated me like trash, like a servant in my own home. While you poured everything into him," I gestured toward my brother, whose smugness had turned to pale confusion. "But this proves everything. The millions you gave away weren't even yours to give. The mansion you live in? It was mine. The car, the accounts, the life you tried to steal, it was all meant for me." My words hung heavy, and for the first time, I saw them not as parents, not as figures of authority, but as weak, trembling people caught in the net of their own greed. My brother stood abruptly, anger flashing in his eyes, but beneath it, fear, because he knew the foundation of his privilege was cracking. "This doesn't change anything," he shouted, though his voice shook. But I only smiled, a calm, dangerous smile, because I knew it changed everything. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and turned toward the door. "Enjoy your breakfast," I said, pausing only once to glance back at them. "Because it's the last meal you'll have in this house that doesn't belong to you." And with that, I walked out, the morning sun blazing bright against my face, not just warming me but crowning me, reminding me that I had risen from invisibility to undeniable power. I was no longer the forgotten child, no longer the servant. I was the rightful heir, the son of a man who believed in me, the man who had just handed me back not just wealth, but dignity. And as the gates closed behind me, I knew this was only the beginning. The world that had shut its doors on me would soon learn to open them wide, because I had returned. Not as the boy they had cast aside, but as the man who carried truth, power, and destiny in his hands.